Welcome to GameCube Gallery, the series where we are taking a look at the GameCube library one game at a time. In the previous episode of GameCube Gallery, we took a look at Battalion Wars, and if you missed that episode, I'll leave a link to that in the description down below. But in today's episode, we're taking a look at Superman Shadow of Apokolips. Is this the game that will redeem the Superman video game franchise, or will it further send it down the toilet? Let's find out. Superman Shadow of Apokolips was released on the PlayStation 2 on September 25th, 2002, and it was released on the Nintendo GameCube on March 25th, 2003. Sorry, Xbox. And it is a superhero action game starring the Man of Steel himself. It was developed and published by Infograms under the Atari name, which is why you see Atari on the box, and also partially how you know the game might not be good, because Atari is not the company they used to be. Infograms is a development and publishing company that's been around since 1983 before buying out and merging with Atari Incorporated in 2008. Infograms has a very complex and interesting story that I may get into in a future video, but for now we're just going to leave all that out. Infograms developed and or published a ton of games, but some of the more notable games include several games in the Alone in the Dark series, all of the Backyard Sports games, Civilization 3, Driver and Driver 2, Enter the Matrix, Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, and Neverwinter Nights, just to name a few. Now, Superman games have had a long history of being pretty damn bad, and that legacy was solidified by Superman 64 in 1999, which is considered one of the worst games ever made. Superman Shadow of Apokolips was released a mere 3 years later, and now we're asking ourselves, was it a good game and did it redeem the series? Well, let's dig into it. Now, a quick disclaimer. You're going to hear me say a lot of negative things about this game, and you will hear a lot of criticism, but be sure and stay tuned for my conclusion because it may surprise you in a positive way. Superman Shadow of Apokolips is based on the TV series Superman the Animated Series in the design, look, and feel of the game. They used cel-shaded animation for the cutscenes to really capture the look of the show, and the original voice cast from the show returned to reprise their roles for their respective characters, with the exception of Darkseid and Parasite, who were voiced by different actors. In Superman Shadow of Apokolips, Superman finds out there are robots called Interbots all over Metropolis causing issues. These robots have powerful weapons from the planet Apokolips capable of hurting and even killing Superman. They are being commanded by Lex Luthor, who is in turn being commanded by Darkseid. You set out to defeat the robots and take out their weapons, as well as defeat Parasite, Metallo, and Livewire, who have all been sent to kill Superman. Honestly, in terms of superhero stories, this one was pretty damn boring and didn't grab me at all. The plot was bare bones with no real satisfaction or twists, and the writing was very poor. This definitely feels like a story that was written very quickly. Even the likeness of the animated series and the original cast voicing the roles was not enough to save the story. Honestly, the voice acting is very inconsistent, with it being okay at times and downright bad at others. It felt like some of the actors and actresses did not care, or maybe they knew this was going to be a bad game and didn't even try. Who really knows? So let's talk about the graphics. They're not good. I appreciate the fact that they went with a cel-shaded art style similar to the cartoon style of the show, because I think that art style fits a comic book game very well, but they did not execute it well, and it almost feels like they had a very small budget. When you look at the graphics for this game compared to other cel-shaded GameCube games such as 13 or The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, you will see a huge difference in quality. The colors in Superman Shadow of Apokolips are very dull and flat and not very exciting at all. They are not crisp, vibrant, and popping off the screen like in The Wind Waker. Instead, they're sort of muddy looking, and the environments have no texture to them in most cases. Walls and floors look generic, and environmental objects are pretty boring. The best parts are the character models, and that's not saying much because even they look dull and boring. The character animations are very bizarre and janky as well, sometimes resulting in hilarity on screen. During cutscenes, it's very odd because sometimes the characters' mouths will move and sometimes they will not. It's quite inconsistent. So all around, the graphics are just bad, and as a matter of fact, I was live streaming the game a few weeks ago and one of my viewers said it looked like a game with graphics somewhere between the Nintendo 64 and early Dreamcast, and you know what? They were right on the money. The graphics are just not good. So what about the music and sound design? Surely they're good, right? Well, unfortunately the music is for sure another area they cheaped out on because in every level you hear pretty much the same damn music, and although it isn't terrible, it is also very forgettable, so there is absolutely no variety in the music, and that's a shame. The sound design is not too bad, with plenty of cool sound effects from guns to your superpowers, punching sound effects, so on and so forth. It's pretty decent. I will say this though, the one-liners from the characters, enemies, and bosses, oh man, those are annoying and super cheesy. They are funny at times until you hear them for the millionth time and then they get annoying as hell. So here's where we are so far. The story, graphics, music, and overall presentation is not very good, but the sound design is decent. So what about what I feel is one of the most important aspects of a game, being the gameplay and the overall fun factor? Well, let's get into that next. Superman Shadow of Apokolips is divided into 14 missions, each with a variety of objectives and goals. This is one area where Superman did relatively well, as there are a decent variety of objectives in each mission. Some missions have you rescuing people and taking them to a safe spot, some have you trying to protect people from enemies, and some even have you escorting a group of people and defending them. There are missions where you have to prevent massive destruction, like a huge dam bursting open or a nuclear meltdown, and there's even one stealth mission where you play as Clark Kent and you have to infiltrate one of Lex Luthor's buildings. Some of the objectives you have to partake in are timed, which I'm not particularly a fan of, but thematically it makes sense, and there's some boss fights to contend with, most of which are in the last 4 levels, which we'll get to later. As Superman, you have a variety of moves available to you in your arsenal, and you can freely fly around in the levels. The flight controls are not too bad, but they do take some getting used to. It's kind of hard to maneuver around until you adjust. You can of course punch enemies, grab them, throw objects, rip pipes off the wall and use them as clubs, but you also have access to some of Superman's superpowers. You have your super breath, which allows you to put out fires, your x-ray vision, which allows you to see through objects, your super hearing, which is basically your radar, bullet speed, which allows you to fly really fast and slam into enemies, heat vision and heat blast, which are essentially projectiles, a ground slam attack, and finally a sort of spinning tornado-like attack. Most of these superpowers use your superpower meter, which along with your health bar will regenerate slowly over time. The only powers I really found useful in combat were the bullet speed, the ground slam, and the heat blast, and thankfully you can lock onto enemies, but it's a bit wonky. Now the controls, they're not terrible, they're a bit janky and take some getting used to, but once you get used to them, controlling Superman is actually not that bad. The game, however, is incredibly glitchy, the difficulty is inconsistent, and the hit detection is downright awful, which results in an experience that can sometimes be frustrating. They had some cool gameplay ideas and mechanics here, but they were poorly executed and none of it comes together cohesively to create a great experience. The boss fights are very poorly done as well, as most of them, with the exception of one, are incredibly easy. Most of the boss fights can be won by either spamming the bullet speed attack or sometimes spamming the punch attack. Or in the case of what happened to me with the last boss, they just stop what they're doing and just stand there and stare at you, and you can spam them with heat blasts. But the worst part is the inconsistency in difficulty. The last 4 missions of the game are all boss fights, and mission 11, where you fight Livewire, is one of the most annoying and frustrating boss fights I've ever faced in a video game. There were some cool ideas involving using water against her, but the problem is her attacks are extremely hard to avoid in an unfair way, and most of them stun you and send you flying, and they do a ton of damage. Then after that, the final 3 boss fights are stupidly simple. It was disappointing. It's a pretty short game as well, with it taking on average around 3 to 4 hours to complete, which is also very disappointing, and the fastest speed run is 1 hour and 57 minutes, which I'll link to in the description down below in case you want to check that out. So here's the thing about Superman Shadow of Apokolips. It's not a terrible game, but it's not good either. It has some cool ideas and some fun moments, but they are spread too thin and not consistent. The game has a lot of problems and feels low budget and rushed, and certainly does not redeem Superman games by any stretch of the imagination. But Despite all that, I still found myself having fun and being entertained while playing it. Besides the live wire boss fight, I enjoyed myself. Can't say I will ever play the game again, but I enjoyed myself nonetheless. And at the end of the day, for me personally, if I had fun playing a video game and I was entertained, then that is the most important thing for me personally, and Superman achieved that, oddly enough. Now on the review side, Superman Shadow of Apokolips received average reviews on Metacritic with an average critic score of 66 out of 100 with only 7 critic reviews, and an average user score of 7.1 out of 10 with only 9 user ratings. Superman Shadow of Apokolips was an absolute flop sales-wise for the GameCube, with it only selling around 60,000 units in North America and only around 80,000 units worldwide, which is abysmal. In comparison, the PS2 version sold around 210,000 units in North America and only 420,000 units worldwide, which, considering the popularity of both the PS2 and Superman, that's not that great either. At the time of this recording on PriceCharting.com, the GameCube version of Superman Shadow of Apokolips average loose price is around $9, average price complete is around $15, and the average price new is around $30. At the time of this recording, I'm seeing current eBay listings complete for around $20 to $24, and I'm seeing recent sold listings complete for around $18 to $20. This is one of those games that could eventually shoot up in price on the GameCube, just like many uncommon and rare GameCube games have in the last year. So if you are a collector or just want to play it, you should buy it while it's still relatively cheap. So there you have it, folks, an episode of GameCube Gallery on Superman Shadow of Apokolips. This is a very interesting game, and I can't help but wonder what the story is behind this game. I have a feeling that the development story behind this game is probably incredibly interesting, because I have a feeling that they had to rush this game out and that they did not have a very high budget like they should have had with it being a superhero game. But who really knows unless somebody is able to get the inside scoop on that story. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever played Superman Shadow of Apokolips, and if you have, let me know what you think about it. Also, let me know in the comments down below what your favorite Superman game is, or what you think is the best Superman game. So far, this is the best Superman game I've ever played, which is kind of sad. Also, let me know in the comments down below if there are any GameCube games you think I should play in a future video. As always, folks, if you're new here, consider subscribing so that you can join the RetroWolf family. Stay safe out there, everybody. Keep playing games and having a good time, and I'll see you all in the next video. Later.